Good evening and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antiques Society tasting. Tonight I'm going to do a tasting of three new Hebridean distilleries peated whiskies. I've done this because one of the distilleries is actually Lagg Distillery on Arran, which is of course separated from the Hebrides by the Kintyre Peninsula. So it's not really a Hebridean island. It's in the Firth of Clyde. It's the seventh largest island in Scotland, and it's often referred to as Scotland in miniature, and certainly well worth a visit. And it's a sort of unique, quite a spiritual place. Not so nice walking. And it has a bus service that goes round the island. It's about 50 miles, 55 miles right round. And there is a path goes right round the island that you can walk if you're into that. The three whiskies we'll taste tonight are the Hearach from Isle of Harris, Lagg Corriecravie edition sherry cask finish from Arran, and from Isla we have the Ardnahoe Inaugural release, 5-year-old. So first up is the Hearach, bottled at 46% from Isle of Harris Distillery. The Isle of Harris Distillery is in the small village of Tarbet and describes itself as a social distillery and was founded to strengthen the local economy. It's the first legal distillery on the Isle of Harris, which is in the Outer Hebrides, and that also produces Harris gin. It was opened in 2015 and it was the brainchild of Anderson Burr Bakewell, who has been associated with the island for over 50 years and was keen to do something about the weak local economy and the associated population decline which haunts the islands and also the Highlands of Scotland. In the spirit of the social distillery, the team is made up of only locals, and each of the 5 distillers hired are completely new to the whisky industry and they've been specially trained to make the Harris whisky. Any leftover barley is given to small scale farmers on the island for their livestock, and the community nosing panel meets regularly to check the quality of the spirits. So the soft water used by the distillery comes from the rainwater stream Abain Knock Charain or Carrain, and has a low mineral content. To distill the whisky, Harris has a wash still which is filled with 6,000 litres and a spirit still which is fitted with 3,500 litres. It uses medium smoked barley with a phenolic content of 13 to 15 parts per million for its whisky. The mash tun is filled with 1.5 tons of grist, which passes through 3 rotering processes, giving a result of about 6,000 litres of mash, each of which is poured into the distillery's 8 washbacks, which are made of common Douglas fir. And after a fermentation period of 3 to 5 days, the Harris gets a fruity wort that has aromas of apple, pear, and tropical fruit. The whisky is matured in ex-Kentucky bourbon cask as well as sherry cask from Huelva in Spain, and is stored in the distillery's 3 warehouses on the banks of Loch an Siar near Ardnahoe. The small difference in temperature on the island between summer and winter are very suitable for reductive maturation of the Scottish Island whisky from Harris. So the Isle of Harris whisky, the Hearach, Gaelic for a resident of Harris, is distilled, matured and bottled entirely on the island. With the islands bordering to the east and the wide open Atlantic to the west, The Isle of Hearach distillery is one of the most remote distilleries in Scotland. It's unchill filtered and natural colour and is intended to embody the character, soul, and elemental nature of the Isle of Hearach. The first bottling of the Hearach was released in September 2023 and bottled at 46% alcohol by volume. Here we have the Hearach. It's a little sample I've got from a friend. Single malt batch 5, matured in ex Heaven Hill Cask, 21%, 64% ex Buffalo Trace Cask, 11% ex Oloroso Cask, and 4% ex Spino Cask. And it's distilled from Scottish concerto barley, peated at 14.1 phenol parts per million. There's no age statement on the label, but the distillery website clearly states batch 5 is at least 5 years old. So it's quite pale in colour, natural colour, and there's a nice tide line, quite thin tiers. And you get an immediate maltiness, and the slightly smoky barley has stand out. But you also get orris root and plaster. It's quite fresh and mentholated right away. You get the hints of the crushed grains and hay. And there's a subtle beach bonfire in the distance. Then you get some of the sweeter notes of custard and caramelised nuts, lime and stewed apples. And there's light whiffs of green leafy notes and a touch of leather. And then that lime again, crushed mint leaves and pear skin. And finally, a whisper of tobacco. Let's try the mouth. It's got a pleasant, creamy texture. So a sweet and minty combo again, with a good oily texture, yellow apples and hints of peach. And mint leaves, a subtle white pepper. It's a creamy vanilla custard, barley and honey breakfast cereals with some floral notes. Just a little peach smoke, but it's not in your face. Nicely subtle and integrated. With some licorice and peach and some apple. That cereal influence is present as well. It's sweet with a sliver of smoke. There's a gentle note of eucalyptus with a pinch of white pepper. And the finish is a medium length. There's notes of barley and there's a subtle peat lingering, a hint of green olives, hints of licorice, peat and green herbs coming out. I'm going to try a mill of water in this. And you now get a sort of balance of maritime and fruity aromas. A sort of fresh, briny note, like being in the sea on a boat. And it's coupled with that gentle sweetness. Orchard fruits such as apples and pears. Then you get the hints of honey and heather, and that subtle wafts of peat smoke and sea air are there, but they're not overpowering. But it does add a layer of depth to the nose, and there's undertones of vanilla and malt, which give it a rounded and complex profile. I'm trying them out. And we get that initial burst of sweetness, fruity flavours, apple, pear, and citrus, and then you get that malty core. And the maritime influence carries through with a slight saltiness, which complements the overall sweetness. And as it develops on the palate, you get notes of spice, white pepper, and a touch of cinnamon. Peat smoke becomes more pronounced, which you often find when you add water to peated whiskies, but it's still well integrated, and it offers a balanced smokiness that doesn't overwhelm the other flavours. Texture is still smooth, medium bodied, and it feels rich but not overly heavy. And the smokiness on the finish lingers gracefully. It maintains a balanced interplay between sweet fruit spice with the maritime influence, adding a final touch of saltiness. And then the oak influence becomes more noticeable towards the end, with gentle tannins and a whisper of dried fruits like sultanas and raisins. And it leaves a sort of nice afterglow of smoke and sweetness. So it's early days in the Hearach Distilleries whiskey, uh, but it's already past its infancy. There's a level of integration and subtlety that speaks to the distiller's quality and the distillate's quality. And it's got a style of its own. And this is a nice first impression for me, which makes me curious for the future. It's got a light profile, and I'm not sure I can detect much of the sherry cask, but I like the minty freshness and the nice balance. So a nice start. I'll cleanse my palate with a McAllister's So for the second of these three drams, I'm going to look at the Lagg Corriecravie edition sherry cask finish, bottled at 55%. Lagg is the second distillery of Isle of Arran distillers on the Isle of Arran, sitting alongside Lochranza, but not next to Lochranza. The modern distillery building that opened in 2019 is modelled on the contours on the islands, on the contours of the mountains on the Isle of Arran, as spring from the tiny island of Ailsa Craig, which of course is where all the curling stones in the world are sourced from. Construction of the Lagg distillery began in 2017, And in spring of 2019, the first spirit flowed through the stills. And on 10th of April 2019, cask number 1 was filled. Uh, it draws its fresh spring water from a specially drilled well 110 metres deep. Before the establishment of the second distillery in Ireland, both unpeated Iron whisky and peated Machrie Moor whisky were produced at the Lagg distillery in the north of the island. However, it's very difficult to produce both types under one roof, and the smoky line of Iron distillers is now only produced at Lagg. The 50 parts per million peat used for this comes from the Scottish Highlands in the Aberdeen area. So that'll be a more woody, grassy, and floral in content, in contrast to the phenolic, salty, medicinal Island Isla peat. Distilling at Lagg is traditional, which means a lot is still done manually, such as screwing on valves and measuring the alcohol content. You won't find a computer-controlled system here. The wash still has a volume of 10,000 litres. The spirit still holds 7,000 litres, but is filled with 6,500 litres. It's quite compact, wide shape, produces an oily, grassy spirit with lots of flavourful texture. It has an energy recovery system through which hot water is passed. This allows processed water to be heated to 90 degrees and saves energy. The mash tun at Lagg is filled with 4 tons of barley meal and 16,500 litres of water, then heated and mixed very vigorously with a rake. In the resulting cloudy wort, flavours are produced that also tend to be grassy and oily. Lagg has 4 wooden washbacks and a charger, also wooden, which is used to fill the wash still and is the only one with a measuring instrument. The washbacks are filled with 20,000 litres and yeast is added. 2 different types of yeast are used. The first is added to start the fermentation process and produce alcohol. The second to further adjust the taste. The average fermentation time at Lagg is 78 hours, and that again produces the desired grassy character. Lagg Distillery has a lot of storage space, which it puts to good use. In the first year, 250,000 litres of pure alcohol were produced. In the second year, 550,000 litres. And some of the sister casks, or casks from the sister distillery at Lagg, are also stored in Lagg's large and well-filled warehouses. And the casks of the Lagg Cask Society are also kept there, which were from investors who bought casks to finance the distillery and got their cask in a bottle of the very first cask bottled after 10 years of storage. The distillery uses 90% bourbon barrels, 75% first fill, 25% second fill, and there are some second fill casks from Lagg. And it also uses finishes in different casks, sherry, wine, and Amarone casks, also rum casks, including from the well-known plantation rum. And there's also variations in cask size. They have quarter casks, firkin casks, which are relatively small at around 50 litres. The first batch of Lagg whisky was bottled in 2022 at 50% volume, and it uses malted barley peated to 50 parts per million. The distillery's core range includes the Lagg Comori edition and the Lagg Corriecravie edition, as we're going to taste in a moment. They're both named after villages near the distillery. In addition, the Iron Distilleries launched Project North and South in early 2020. Half peated spirit from Lagg and half unpeated spirit from Lagg were blended and then filled into casks for maturation. So this one I've got a miniature of. I think it's about 5-6 pounds at 5 cl. So it comes in at a generous 55% and had a finishing period in Oloroso cask for about 6 months. The casks were sourced from Jose and Miguel Martin, one of the large players in cask seasoning in Jerez. So what have we got here? Again, this is uncoloured and non-chill filtered, and it's got a fairly thin tide line there. Nice dark colour. So it's fresher than I would have expected. There's touches of sauerkraut, some cloves, nutmegs, and even a hint of elderflower. And you do get vegetal peat, some iodine, and dark embers. But there is also some sherry influence, which slowly creeps in, and you get red currants, milk chocolate, and kirsch. And you get a sliver of wet forest flower, walnuts, apples, and red currants. Dry, slightly dusty, and vegetal kind of peat. Light whiffs of lacquered meat. Hazelnuts and blackberries appear. Then you get the light mentally notes, whiffs of iodine, and early peppercorns. Earthy peppercorns. We'll try them out. And it is thick and oily. Very oily mouthfeel, which is a sort of Lagg trademark. And I get more of that sweet peat that usually comes with sherry maturation. And there is a slight medicinal quality as well. Get hints of cherries, cinnamon, hazelnut, and some damp oak and tobacco. The oak is present, but it's nicely done. Plenty of toffee notes, milk chocolate, and sherry sweetness. It then becomes drier and ashier, like meaty undertones. Some wood spice, cinnamon, ginger, and clove. And there's a grainy sharpness there. It's quite obviously quite a young whiskey, this one. And the finish is long, with a more nutty dryness, dusty ash, and hints of bitter chocolate. It's a tad dried, salted peanuts, a drop of iodine, dark chocolate, and charred oak. I'm going to try 1.5 mil of this. And now the fruits become more distinct. There's mango, oranges. There's quite a bit more heat on the nose. Big maritime aromas and olive brine. And then you get some young spirit aromas. And again, the peat sticks out a lot more on the palate. You get a bit of a vegetable green note and a bit more sweetness. you get on the finish with what is a fruity maritime smoke, dark dried fruits and malt and young oak. It's slightly ashy and sour towards the end. This one's maybe a little rough and ready and rowdy around the edges, especially on the palate, but it's still a very nice result for this young whisky. And the Lagg New Make Spirit provides a strong foundation that stands up against the heavy sherry influence. They're working together, the sherry and the New Make Spirit, very well. So, not bad. I'm going to cleanse my palate with a McAllister's oatcake from Little Isles. So, our third and final dram tonight is the Ardnahoe Inaugural release, 5-year-old, bottled at 50% ABV. So, with the Ardnahoe Distillery, the Lagg family has fulfilled a lifelong dream. Stuart Lagg, the managing director of the independent bottler Hunter Lagg and Co., began his whisky career in 1966 at the Corriecravie Distillery on Islay, and together with his sons Andrew and Scott, he opened his own distillery, Ardnahoe, in October 2018. The Lagg family found a perfect piece of land for this, with the 4-hectare plot on Loch Ardnahoe in the northeast of Islay. Construction of Islay's 9th distillery began at the end of 2016 and production finally started in 2018. So, to produce Ardnahoe whisky, the distillery uses soft peated water from the loch of the same name, Loch Ardnahoe. In addition, 2 traditional worm tubs are used to cook the freshly distilled whisky, which is unique on Islay. The rapid cooling of the alcoholic vapours, which are channeled through the pipes of the worm tubs, give them more depth of flavour and complexity. And distillery manager Fraser Hughes is responsible for Ardnahoe's first whisky. Distillation takes place in 2 copper pot spills, which were manufactured by Speyside Copperworks. The wash stills hold 13,000 litres and the spirit still 11,000 litres. The lantern-shaped stills with their long swan necks have a lot of copper contact, and together with slow distillation, the result is a distillery character with a fruity and peaty flavour. The peated malt is milled at the Ardnahoe distillery in 100-year-old Vickers Bobby mill. The malt, with a peat content of 5 to 40 parts per million, comes from the local Port Ellen malt house. Ardnahoe is the only distillery on Islay to feature traditional worm tub condensers. The milled grist is fed into the mash tun together with heated water from Loch Ardnahoe, and the resulting wort goes on to fermentation, while the residue from the malt, also known as draff, is used by local farmers as cattle feed. Ardnahoe has 4 traditional Oregon pine washbacks. The wort is mixed with yeast and fermented for 65 to 70 hours. It's matured in American white oak bourbon casks from the USA, and European Oloroso casks from Jerez in Spain. Some of the casks are stored at the distillery on Islay. So the inaugural release of the Ardnahoe Islay whiskey, which is strictly limited, was launched in the first bottling in May 2024. After 5 years of maturation in a combination of ex-bourbon and ex-sherry cask, it was bottled at an alcohol content of 50% ABV. This is the first new whiskey from Islay since Kilchoman released its first single malt in 2009. And there's a total of 70,000 bottles of this released worldwide. So let's see where we are with this new Islay. And it's got a fairly thin tide line. Nice tears. And that's a surprising complex array of aromas. Dried soil, proving bread, rum and raisin sweets, black pepper. It's like those Basset fruit salad sweets. Pear drops, tar and dried apricots. And then go back in, you get some bonfire smoke, prunes and burnt caramel. There's good alcohol integration in this. And, you know, if I'd been nosing this blind, I would have put its age at 8, 10 years old. Bonfires, smoked meat, bacon, toffee and baked apple. Big hit of soot and peat smoke. Earthy and warm. It fills the room just from the glass. And you know, it's like Lagg and a bit of Ardbeg and a bit of Ardmore. But you know, it's very strongly reminding me of Lagg. It's a grassy soot and warm wood smoke. Charred logs, seashells and tidal losh ropes. Thick set honey, chili chocolate, dark cherries, orange rind. And it's a sort of singed orange rind. Caramelized brown sugars, cooked apples and white pepper. Try the mouth. And it's deeper and darker than you would think. Got a lovely mouth coating. And this initial burst of campfire soot and smoke subsides to sort of sheer burnt apples and cinnamon, and a creamy custardiness that leads you along the sherry trifle note. Booze soap, sponge fingers, red berries, grated dark chocolate and peach slices. There is cigarette ash, chili jam spice, caramelized sugar, gingerbread, dried wood, lemon juice and soil. It's a bit less sweet than the nose would have suggested. It's a little dry, but it's not unpleasant. Peppery, orange citrus, smoky, but all overpoweringly balanced by a toffee sweetness. You can get notes of fresh leather and green apples emerging. It's clean and refreshing on the finish, with a sea breeze quality. and there's spice and a hint of peat lingering beyond the sweeter notes. Long and warm, it's very satisfying. I'll try a drop or two of water on this. And with water, it brings out lemon zest. And you do get a bit of warehouse funk, plums, cherries, vanilla essence, and burnt toast. And the profile shifts from fruity to have more savoury notes of salted peanuts and cashews. You also get strawberry chewits and plain crisps. Peaty character remains pronounced, featuring ash and dried earth. We'll try them out. And the water brings out a distinctive lemon note. Tones down the dryness and spice and balances the flavours nicely and accentuates the sweetness. And there's some similarities with Ardbeg. A hint of dark chocolate bitterness emerges. Mouthfeel remains pleasing. There's a sage note and a lighter lemon citrus note. And the finish with water still has a good length. It was less spicy than before. Has the wait been worth it? In a word, yes. I think it's one of the better offerings from the new wave of distilleries emerging recently. I think it improves a touch with water. And this first release doesn't rely on a variety of cask types to mask the usefulness of the spirit. And it showcases its quality straightforwardly. I think this is ridiculously impressive for a first release. It's deceptively ready for its young age. And I think it would compete well on a level playing field with any other Smoky Island release, and so many others. I'm really keen to try more from Ardnahoe. The Hearach is a great social project, and they are producing a lot of a very nice dram. And I think Lagg will develop into a great peated sister to Arran. And Ardnahoe, keep your eye on it. It's an Isla for the future, I think. Thank you for listening.